Hello there everybody, it's Subunano2K Nightmare. Welcome back to Umineko. Okay, so after obviously taking some time to calm down, one of you guys was I should have realized this. I honestly should have. There were supposedly 6 victims. Doesn't that technically... 5 or 6, I can't remember. I kind of lost a lot of time when it came to recording, but well, that's not the point. This essentially enacted the first Twilight. Now, I can't remember all the details of the riddle, obviously, off of my head. So, I can't remember what happens on the second Twilight. I'll have to look that up real quick. So, obviously, last episode I was kind of caught off guard. I wasn't thinking that obviously this is supposed to... No, but there's a thing. Is the epitaph actually telling the truth? Will all these people be brought back? I don't know. We're still kind of on the... I think the phrase is we're kind of on the fence, I believe. We're still kind of on the fence about whether Beatrice is real or not. But part of me is honestly starting to think that at this point Beatrice is actually real. Because, 1, the gold that Krause showed us. And 2, something has obviously happened with this epitaph. And 3, that letter. But then again, we could also say that obviously somebody is actually enacting the Twilight. The 12 or 11 Twilights? I don't know. Is enacting all of these. And pretending to be Beatrice. I don't know yet. This is just me, that's okay, that was just me kind of rambling a little bit. Let's just get back into this. I'm still working on getting the, the Japanese Umineko to work. I'm still kind of extracting the files. It's taken me a little longer than I anticipated. And then I'm going to try to see if I can get it to work. So, I only ask that you guys please be please be patient with me. I don't know, I just want to make you guys happy, that's all. So let's just go ahead and jump right in. See what happened after the sudden incident. Okay. All that could be heard was the sound of the rain, the voices from the kids' TV program Maria was watching, and the engrossed Maria's cackling voice. In other words, what greeted them as they returned dumbfounded from that horribly bizarre scene was the voice of Maria as she rolled around laughing at the TV. Those who returned to the room didn't know how to explain to Maria that her mother was dead, and were trapped by a suffocating silence. At first, Maria returned their stares with a dubious look, but when she realized they weren't trying to blame her for anything, she ignored them and again immersed herself in the TV program. The children wordlessly sat down heavily on the sofa. Their minds were probably blank from their state of shock. Everyone had already cried and mourned so much, but now they just vaguely sat there, their faces seeming to have lost all emotion. Only Cannon had returned to his usual calm expression. However, that probably didn't mean he'd been able to wipe out the shock. Nothing was reflected in his eyes as he stared into empty space. Hideyoshi kept on fidgeting, and every time he remembered that horrible scene, he started muttering about how he couldn't believe it, how it couldn't have been something from this world, how it must have been the work of demons. Every now and then, his mutterings produced a question directed at Nanjo. But the latter kept repeating in a calm, doctor-like manner that nothing could be understood by only glancing at the scene, and that until the police arrived, they wouldn't learn anything. However, Nanjo only appeared calm next to Hideyoshi, who simply couldn't suppress his agitation and fear. In fact, Nanjo had also received a huge shock, and his face was deathly pale. Maybe that atmosphere was why she tried to rise to the challenge and take charge. Natsuhi appeared to be unchanged from her normal attitude, and she briskly gave directions.
私はお父様のところへ行ってきます。源氏は急ぎ警察へ連絡を。
she's
かし
taking
こまりまし
charge.
た。
It's a good thing that she's taking charge.
私も一緒させていただいていいかしら、夏日姉さん。クラウス兄さんがいなくなった以上、お父様の補佐は私の仕事だもの。その私が夏日姉さんに任せっきりで、ここでくつろいでいるわけにはいかないわ。
Natsuhi was struck speechless by Ava's aggressive move in a situation like this. Yeah. She seemed to be claiming that, with Kraus dead, the one to take responsibility shouldn't be his wife, but herself, the next highly ranked in the family. Honestly... Ava, really? Or maybe she hadn't been all happy when Natsuhi took command with that reference to her in such an extreme situation. However, even Ava's mind had been blank from shock until a moment ago. She only came to her senses after Natsuhi started giving orders.
お好きになさるといいでしょう。
Natsuhi started walking without saying a word more. Ava followed behind her. Oh, shit. Oh, good lord, I feel so bad for her right now. As they did, Kumasawa ran into the parlor. She usually wasn't the kind of person to run around, so under normal conditions, most people would have taken her entrance as a sign that something was the matter. But because everyone was still stricken with shock, they hardly even noticed her.
奥様奥様
夏日姉さんならお父さんのところへ行ったで。すぐ戻ってくるやろ。どないしたんや、熊沢さん。
それが食堂に血が
In the dining hall? The ears of everyone in the parlor twitched. Everyone thought the same thing. I hope I misheard that. Any container can only hold so much, and no one here would be capable of handling yet another tragedy. So they all thought it. I hope I misheard that.
なんやて？食堂？
朝食の準備に食堂に配膳に行ったら
The first one to start running was George. His harsh footsteps jogged Hideyoshi and Nanjo to their senses, and they chased after him. Battler and the others followed. Oh boy. They flew into the dining hall one after another, but they didn't find any change that might have caused Kumasawa to go pale. To those who had viewed that gruesome scene in the storehouse, it was a bit of an anticlimax. However, Kumasawa had followed them, pointed it out. There really were some traces of blood remaining on the floor. Compared to that terrible scene, it wasn't very impressive. However, if he calmly thought about it, this definitely indicated the loss of a lot of blood.
ここにも血だまりがあるよ。これは一体
So, somebody was injured, or maybe they were trying to escape?
だいぶ時間が経っているように見えますな。
I mean, that might explain why there was blood on Natsuhi's door, or on the door handle.
おそらく昨夜ここで殺されたんだと見ていいでしょう。そういうことになるんやろな。わしらは昨夜ずっと食堂で話し合いをしとった。そしてここに何者かが押し入ったに違いない。
父さんたちが打ち合わせを抜けて休んだのは何時だっけ？
昨夜の24時を少し過ぎたくらいの頃や。だからその後にと考えるんが妥当やろな。
Okay, so it possibly happened after midnight. So early in the morning.
マジかよ。勘弁してくれよ。
Oh, good lord.
お嬢様、しっかり。
俺はもうさっきの倉庫でこの世の地獄ってやつを拝んじまったから、今さらこのくらいじゃ答えねえぜ。
そうかよ。よかったな。私は頭がどうにかなっちまいそうだぜ。ここは食堂だぜ。私は毎日ここで食事をして学校のことをぼやいたり、宿題のことをぼやいたり、親父に学校の成績の話をされたり。お嬢様、これ以上ここにいるのはよくありません。 100万へ戻りましょう。
Well, at least Cannon seems to be sympathetic, I guess.
俺も同感さ。
Okay.
秀吉おじさん、この部屋は多分警察にとって重要な意味があると思います。俺たちが踏み荒らしちまうのはまずいんじゃないですか。
Yeah. I didn't think that. Balor proposed this in a slightly firm voice as, along with Cannon, he grabbed the pail and shaking Jessica's shoulders.
バトラさんの言う通りですな。この部屋にこれ以上好んで居続けることはありますまい。
Nanjo spoke while looking at everyone's pale faces. Even though that horrible scene in the storehouse felt like something not of this world, at least then we'd be able to leave, to cut ourselves off from that place and run away. Everyone had shared in that feeling. However, this dining hall was different. It was in the mansion, the main building on this estate. And as Jessica had said, it should have been one of the most calming places even inside the mansion. It was where all the relatives had eaten lunch and dinner yesterday. The shock of seeing this place smeared with blood reminded us of that horrible spectacle in the storehouse, and forced us to accept that we hadn't really been able to run away from the scene of that tragedy.
わしも同感や。この部屋には犯人の痕跡が残ってるかもわからんしな。素人のわしらがかき回すべきとちゃうで。はよ出るんや。はよはよ。
Hideyoshi also understood the meaning of what Balor had said, and pushed everyone to hurry out of the dining room. The way we were then, looking at that blood any longer would have been too harsh. Nobody would against his words. Everyone raced each other out of the dining room. It was almost as though the last person in the room would be trapped in there, all alone. I wonder how Ava and Natsuhi are doing with Kinzo. I imagine it's going as well as you'd think it would. Once in the hallway, we lent a hand to Kumasawa, who was still trembling and leaning against the wall, and we all headed back to the parlor together. Then Genji returned.
お、源氏さん。警察に連絡はつきましたか。
それが申し訳ございません。
No luck, huh?
無線機の故障か、それ以外の理由によるものかわかりませんが。
なんや、警察に連絡がつかんのか。電話も無線もどっちもダメなんか。
Sounds like it.
申し訳ございません。月曜の朝に船が来ることになっていますので、その船の通信機を借りることができると思います。
この島には船はないんか。新島の警察署までちょっくら行ってくることはできんのか。秀吉さん、この天気では無理だ。
Yeah.
少なくとも台風が通り過ぎるまではどうにもなりません。
クラウス様のボートは今修理中で島にございません。ですので月曜の船を待つほかないかと。
そんなアホな話があるか。
This all seems a little too perfect, I think.
6人も死んだんやで。そして、
Okay, so
電話も無線も通じず、船もない。
Enacting the first Twilight.
台風が過ぎて船が来るまで、つまり明日の朝までわしらは警察にも連絡できず、この島におれっちゅうことなんか。
ってことはつまり俺たちだけじゃなくおじさんたちを殺した犯人もこの島から出られず足止めってことだな。
Uh-oh.
そういうことになるね。みんなを殺した犯人はまだこの島にいる。
And that's not good.
親父たちを殺した奴はこの島から逃げ出せずまだ潜んでやがるってことかよ。くそ見つけ出してやるぜ。警察になんか引き渡すもんか。
Jesus.
私がこの手でやっ先にしてやる。
Uh-oh. Maria had finally realized that something odd was happening in the parlor. Rather than noticing something odd, it was probably better to say she felt unhappy and neglected, Since everyone was getting so excited about something only she didn't know about. Oh, this is not gonna end well.
おー、ジェシカお姉ちゃん、誰か死んじゃったの？
Maria? Are you? The way she spoke was completely calm, just as though she was talking about someone who had appeared on a television drama, as though it was someone else's problem. Jessica probably didn't like that. As though trying to say, can't you tell just by looking at me, overwhelmed with grief, she flared up at Maria.
死んじまったぜ、みんな私の親父もパトラの父さんと母さんも幸田さんもシャノンもそしてマリアの母さんも
Yeah, you probably shouldn't have told her that.
よすんだ、ジェシカちゃん。悲しいのは君だけじゃない。
マリアさん、ショックだろうが、聞いてください。
Okay, I kinda trust you, buddy. You can do it.
あなたのお母さんがな。
That's died.
ママが死んじゃった？おー。
ああ。誰かに殺されちまった。悲しいだろうがよ。心をしっかり。
死んじゃった？
Okay, one, she's not in shock that her mother... She was just told that her mother was dead. She's immediately asking, how many... Uh-oh. Something's not right here.
6人だぜ！6人だ！くそあんな残酷なことしやがって！踊ってもんがあるだろうがよ！人間ならよ！誰だか知らねえが、犯人は人間じゃねえぜ！血の色が赤いわけがねえ！
犯人は人間じゃない。鍵が選んだ生贄なだけ。
It's just the blank chosen by the blank? It's just the sacrifice chosen by the demon's roulette? Or chosen by the riddle?
え？
Huh?
おい、マリア。今、なんて言った？
Maria had just said something, but since the words were so remotely separated from the flow and context of the conversation, I couldn't understand them for a second. When I tried to ask her to repeat it again, I was shocked by the sudden sound of Aunt Natsuhi's loud voice coming from the entrance to the parlor. It looked like Aunt Natsuhi and Aunt Ava had returned from their trip to see grandfather.
無線でも連絡できない？こんな時に使えなくて、何のための防災無線ですか？
申し訳ございません。毎年、保守点検はさせているはずなのですが。
ほら、光をチカチカさせるみたいな船舶信号ってあるじゃない？そういうので向こうの島に連絡することはできないのかしら？
Makes a flashing light. You mean like one of those things that used for like Morse code through light?
そのような設備はございません。
Oh.
申し訳ございません。
Just then, Kumasawa arrived, pushing a serving cart loaded with breakfast. Since there was no way we'd be able to eat in the dining hall, Hideyoshi had ordered her to take it to the parlor. Well, that's nice.
なぜ朝食をこちらに？
Oh, shit, that's right. Ava and Natsuhi don't know.
ああ、夏日さん、それは後で話す。それよりエヴァ、お父さんはどうなんや？ご一緒でないところを見ると、このような事態になっても部屋から出ませんか？
いないわ。部屋は空っぽだったの。
なんやて？
Wait, what? Oh, wait, I heard the noise. You guys told me to basically pay attention. If you hear a water drop, then something happened. Wait, his image grayed out. Okay. Disappeared from his study unnoticed. Kinzo's study has everything from a bed to a toilet to a bathtub, so it is extremely rare for him to go outside. However, he does occasionally go out for a walk on a whim without telling anybody, and his disappearance invariably leads to a huge uproar throughout the house. He usually comes back as soon as he gets hungry. Usually. Thank you guys for kind of telling me about how you'll hear a water drop or a rain droplet and then something will be updated. So, thanks for that.
こんな時にどこ行ったんや。
親方様が書斎を出られたというのですか。
That is correct. I was surprised myself. I wonder when he left his room. Do any of you have any idea? Natsuhi looked at Genji and Kanon as she said this. Maybe she was trying to ask whether the servants who served directly under the one-winged eagle knew of a place he might go. However, it was probably the other way around. Their faces made it clear that those who knew Kinzo best realized even more than the rest how impossible it was for him to leave his room.
僕たちにも見当がつきません。
ご存知の通り、親方様はあの書斎の中に、お休みの場所からご不浄まで、すべて親方様があの部屋をお出になることなど、よっぽどのことがない限り、考えられません。
となると、なんや、そのよっぽどのことがあったって考えるのが自然だっちゅうことになるんか。
まだそうと決まったわけではありません。とにかく気まぐれな方ですから、現状をご存知なくお一人で散歩をされている可能性もあります。
Or maybe he's going to meet up with Beatrice because he knows that she's
仮にそうだとしたら、一刻も早く現状をお知らせしてご指示を仰がねばなりません。
That or he could be dead. Then again,
そうね。
I don't think that he's dead because the first Twilight recalled only for 6 victims or 6 sacrifices. So
考えたくはないけど、お父様の身に何かあったのかもしれないしね。そのような不吉なことは考えたくもありません。
no one had seen Kinzo since the discovery of those 6 terrible corpses. On top of that, the phones were broken. The radio wouldn't reach anyone, and there was no way to contact the police. Are we not just gonna just freaking question Maria's, sudden change? How she's not obviously heartbroken that her mother's dead? Apparently the typhoon would leave tomorrow and a boat would come. But until then, no one could rely on anyone outside the island, nor could they escape the island. The tragedy had hit everyone so abruptly that they'd lost all their composure. Everyone felt a heavy silence. Everyone was impatient. Even though they needed to do something, they couldn't think of anything, so some of them held their heads in their arms while others got irritated. Right now, no one can explain what was occurring on this island, Rokanjima. I imagine so. After that, we ate the breakfast Kumasawa-san had made, which felt dry and tasteless. Of course, this was right after something like that had happened. No one felt particularly hungry. However, we understood logically that not eating would weaken our bodies. It would also be rude to Kumasawa-san, who had made the breakfast. Kumasawa-san had taken some unusual Western vegetables, ones that Goda-san had probably ordered for his ultra-elaborate meals, and cooked them in a Japanese style, which made them turn an unpleasant color. As to what Goda-san had been planning to cook with these ingredients, right then I couldn't even imagine it. If I did think about it, I'd be reminded of the way Goda-san died, and a sour taste would fill the inside of my mouth. Everyone pretended to eat for the time being, but of course no one made much progress. Then we began pooling our knowledge of our current situation. First off, 6 people, which included Uncle Kraus, my dad, Kiri-san, Aunt Rosa, Goda-san, and Shenin-chan, had been found in the Rose Garden storehouse as brutally mutilated corpses. And yet we still couldn't contact the police, since both the phones and the radio were unusable. So until the typhoon passed, there was nothing we could do. Furthermore, Grandfather, who we might have hoped would be able to show a little leadership in this kind of situation, had disappeared some time ago. Goda-san hadn't made breakfast, so Grandfather's stomach must have been empty. And if he had just been taking a casual walk, we should have been able to hear him whining about how hungry he was by now. And despite that, he hadn't appeared. There was more than a small chance that he'd gotten caught up in this crime. According to my aunts, on their way back from Kinzo's study, they'd searched for him, calling out on every floor, but were unable to find him. Considering the timing of it all, it's only reasonable to assume that this disappearance had something to do with the crime. We figured Dad and the rest were probably killed in the dining hall, and then painstakingly moved to the storehouse, and I don't think he's strong enough to do that. So maybe Grandfather had already been killed, and dragged to some strange place, which we simply hadn't discovered yet. No one actually said it out loud, but this theory seemed extremely convincing.
私たちはお屋敷の戸締まりを確認してきます。
Okay,
お
good.
父様も念入りに探さなければなりません。子供たちはこの部屋を出ないように。
Eve-san and Hideyoshi-san, I'm sorry. Please stay here with the children.
南條先生もお願いいたします。
わかりました。ここでお待ちしています。
Aunt Natsuhi followed the servants, Genji-san, Kumasawa-san, and Kananku, out of the parlor. All that was left was Aunt Eva, Uncle Hideyoshi, Dr. Nanjo, and the 4 of us children, a total of 7 people.
みんなで仲良くテレビでも見て待ってよな。しかし日曜日の午前中はろくな番組やっとらへんな。
Uncle Hideyoshi started acting cheerfully, trying to brighten up this gloomy atmosphere.
ろくな番組見る。
お、そうか。マリアちゃんはテレビ見るか。じゃあおじさんと一緒に見ような。
Maria was the only one who joined in. Even though Maria had been told of her mother's death, she didn't show the slightest flicker in her emotions. Was it really normal for a 9-year-old girl like Maria to act so much like a very young child? Everyone else's mood failed to improve, and they each sank absent-mindedly into their sofas.
兄貴、聞いていいか。
なんだい。
さっき倉庫で兄貴はシャノンちゃんの指輪の話をしたよな。
Okay, before I go further, Battler, honestly, okay, from what I can tell, you seem like the guy who would be okay with George and Shannon, I think.
あれ、送ったのは兄貴か。
George Aniki didn't answer, but he hung his head and closed both of his eyes. Could be no clearer response.
よせよバトラー、少しは察しろよ。
だな、悪いことを聞いたぜ。
そうさ、僕だよ。彼女に昨べ求婚したんだ。その時指輪を渡した。明日になったらそれを好きな指にはめて返事としてくれって気ざったらしいことを言ってね。
And that ring had been on the ring finger of Shannon Chan's left hand.
私さ、数年前からシャドウに相談を受けてたぜ。ジョージ兄さんのことでさ。
なんて言ってたのかな。
シャノンは嘘をつくのが下手だったからよ。ジョージ兄さんのことを言ってるのはすぐにバレバレでさ。自分は使用人の身分だけど親しくしてもいいのだろうかとか、男の人の好きそうなものは何かとか、どういう服を着たら喜ぶかとか、そんなことをいろいろとさ。なんつうのか、まあ焼けたぜ。
You're literally making me sad again. Stop it.
それが婚約指輪を渡されておしまいかよ。
価値観は人それぞれだけどよ、
男から求婚され人生の到達点なんだと思うんだよ。だからきっと昨夜のシャノンは心の底から。
Stop it, you're making my heart hurt a lot more. George Aniki sighed deeply, without raising his head. Or maybe tears had risen to his eyes.
シャノンは昨べゲストハウスの当番だったらしいんだ。でもシャノンは僕と一緒にゲストハウスに帰るのを恥ずかしがってお屋敷に行ってしまった。
シャノンの気持ちを察しろよ。婚約指輪をもらえばどんなに予告されてたって普通は舞い上がっちまって頭は真っ白になっちまうぜ。気恥ずかしくて仕方なかったんだろうよ。
当番でないはずのお屋敷へ行き、そこで郷田さんの事件に巻き込まれてしまった。僕があの日、
Dude, don't blame
あの場
yourself.
所で指輪なんか渡さなく、さよは事件に
Dude, it's not your fault. Don't say that.
兄貴、それだけは違うぜ。断じて違う。だからそれ以上泣くんじゃねえ。
バトラ君、そっとしてあげなさい。
After Aunt Ava had said that, I stopped talking to him. Misplaced words of comfort might actually do more harm than good. Jessica sat down next to Aniki and put an arm around him. Maybe only Jessica, who had known about Aniki and Shannon's love since the beginning, and who had even discussed that relationship with Shannon, could comfort Aniki now. I went over to Aunt Ava and sat down on the opposite sofa.
バトラ君は強いわね。もうだいぶしっかりしているように見えるわよ。
まあほら、愛の深さが傷の深さじゃないっすか。俺は別にあんなクソ親父同士の方が知ったことじゃないし、桐江さんは気の毒ですが、まあ本当の親ってわけじゃないですしね。
あら、という割にはさっきすっごく大泣きしてたわよ。
まあ育ての親に対する恩はあのくらい泣けば OK かと思いまして。
そのあたりの切り替えの速さやドライなあたりは本当にルドルフ譲りね。
That kid would always get violently happy, sad and angry.
すぐにケロリと平静を取り戻したわ。
そんなことはないっすよ。俺だってまだまだ心のショックから立ち直れちゃいません。ただ俺がみんなと違うのは、それによってどういう感情が生み出されるかってことだと思います。
どういうこと？
I've been acting much calmer than George Aniki and Jessica. That wasn't because my sadness was any less intense, or because I'd already recovered. My sadness was simply getting replaced gradually with a different emotion.
悲しいっていうよりは腹立たしいって気持ちなんすよ。どこのドイツがこんなことをしやがったのか。横っ面に一発お見舞いしてやらないことに腹の虫が収まらねえんです。
That was what I really wanted to do. I couldn't forgive myself if I just sat there, overwhelmed with sadness and hugging my knees.
親父たちが殺されて以降、この島は台風に包まれたままです。つまりこれだけの上等を決めてくれやがった野郎はまだ
そういうことになるわね。今も暗い森のどこかに身を潜めているのかしら。
I felt like I'd had a very similar conversation with Kiri-san the night before. That's right. After the letter from the person claiming to be Beatrice appeared at the dinner table last night. I didn't mean to do that. We need to go back to the backlog. I clicked and it skipped. We talked about whether or not a 19th person actually exists.
この殺人、昨夜のベアトリーチェの手紙と何か関連があるんでしょうかね。
ああ、例の？さあ、どうかしらね。あの手紙はお父様が遺産問題に絡みたくて出した怪文書という見方で兄弟は一致したんだけれども、それと今朝の事件に関係があるかは今の段階では分かりかねるわね。
あの手紙、本当にベアトリーチェなんて魔女がマリアに渡したんすかね。
まさか全部お父様の仕組んだ茶番でしょ。
Do you really think it was?
シャノンちゃんあたりに肖像画のドレスを着させてマリアちゃんを騙したんでしょう。お父様らしい手の込みすぎたいたずらだと思うけど。
ゆうべキリエさんとベアトリーチェは実在するんだろうかって話をしたんすけど、キリエさんも俺たち18人の中にベアトリーチェがいるだろうと言ってましたね。
そんなの当然じゃない。この島には私たちしかいないのよ。なら私たちの中の誰かがベアトリーチェを語ったに決まってるじゃない。
Or that you know there really could be a Beatrice.
すか。
当然でしょ。私たち以外の誰がここにいるっていうの？この島には私たちしかいない。18人しかいない。ならベアトリーチェを語るのも18人の中の誰かしかいないじゃない。
Kiri-san denied the existence of a 19th person by spinning the chessboard around. Even though Aunt Ava had constructed an argument that complicated her opinion, at least was the same. Except, if that's the case, our situation starts to look very ugly. At the time of Beatrice's letter, the whole thing could be passed off as a prank set up by someone or another. However, if we're assuming there's no 19th person, we can't ignore this anymore. In other words...
19人目がいないなら、親父たちを殺した犯人も18人の中にいるってことになっちまうじゃないですか。つまり、今この屋敷にいる誰かが殺したってことになる。
Aunt Ava smiled meaningfully. It looked like she thought this conclusion should have been obvious from the very beginning.
犯人は倉庫の中に6人の遺体を運び込んだわ。でもよく倉庫の中に運び込めたわよね。あのシャッターは常に閉められていて施錠されていたそうよ。つまり倉庫内に運び込むにはシャッターの施錠を開ける必要があった。わかる？
たまたまその日シャッターが開けっぱなしになってた可能性が。
使用人たちは常に閉めていると言ってたわ。つまり鍵を使用人室から持ち出さなくては倉庫は絶対に開けられない。
鍵は使用人室の一つしかないんすかね。
源氏さんはそうだと言ってるわ。ということは犯人はそのたった一つの倉庫の鍵のありかを知っていて持ち出した。さっきカノン君が使用人室に鍵を戻すところを見たわ。壁にびっしりと鍵がかけられていて、とても素人にはどこに何がかけてあるのかわからなかった。
Oh, okay.
犯人はその中から倉庫の鍵を見事選び出したの。しかも札も何もついていない鍵を手にしてバラ庭園裏にある倉庫の鍵だと理解した。ついでに倉庫の場所すら理解している。もっとはっきり断言する。犯人は使用人室の内部にも熟知している。
Her argument was extremely plain and clear. If the bodies had been found thrown somewhere in the bushes off the rose garden, there wouldn't have been much to go on. However, if there was only one key to the storehouse in the servant room, and it was stored with such a large group of keys, a novice would not be able to tell them apart. This meant the culprit was someone who went into the servant room a lot and was familiar with the location of the keys. But then again, this detail feels like it's trying to, mark one of the servants as the culprit, because this seems like it's an obvious fact, so it wouldn't be smart of the criminal to do something that would basically incriminate them and make them suspicious. So, what does that mean? The family members didn't normally go into the servant room, which meant that.
ってことは、使用人の犯人。
悪いけど、それ以上はおばさんも言えないわよ。でも、一つだけ教えられることがあるわ。
なんすか？
犯人たちは複数で、そして十分な武装をしていたと考えられるわ。
You're thinking multiple culprits?
だってそうでしょ。食堂にいた兄さんたち4人を一度に襲って殺し、合計6人分の遺体をようようバラ庭園の向こうの倉庫まで運んで、悪趣味な化粧と落書きを施している。これだけのことを単独犯で行えるはずもないでしょう。
It made sense. It probably would have been impossible for a single person with enough time, but it would take so incredibly long. It was probably safe to assume that a significant number of people were involved. But who would gain from it?
ってことは、エヴァおばさんは
静かになさいな。憶測で言っちゃ悪いわよ。それにもし本当にそうだったらどうするつもり？彼らは私たちを生かして返さないでしょうね。しかも兄さんたち4人をやすやすと殺した相手なのよ。今この部屋に残っていてまともに戦えそうな人間はうちの家族の3人にせいぜいバトラ君で4人ってところ。状況は昨晩と何も変わらない。つまり犯人にとって残る私たちを皆殺しにするなんて簡単なことなのよ。
I'd been playing detective with Aunt Ava, trying to expose the person who had killed Dad and the rest of them before the police did. If only I could cleverly penetrate the culprit's identity and stick the proof in their face. I'd been so sure that, just like in one of those detective movies, the culprit would then give up and surrender. However, the culprit would only surrender if there was no way for them to fight back. The culprits behind the crime on this island were far from helpless, and might even be able to massacre all the remaining people here. And on top of that, this island was like a giant closed room, cut off from the outside world by the typhoon. So they had a full day, until tomorrow, to kill, scheme, and camouflage themselves. In short, it wasn't a safe atmosphere where we could get very far by playing detective. To the contrary, we were at a stage where we had to be scared stiff, since playing detective might displease the culprits, and cause them to commit another mass murder.
あくまでも可能性の問題よ。でも私は使用人の人たちをまだ信用できないわね。それに私は使用人だけを疑ってるわけじゃないの。さらに黒幕がいるかもしれないと思ってる。
黒幕？どうしてですか？
勘よ。使用人は書いて字のごとし、誰かに使用されて手足となる存在。殺されたのは後宮家の親族ばかり。ならその結果で利害が発生する人間が関わるのは当然。
Oh, but wait a minute, wouldn't that technically be meaning accusing yourself also? Literally the people who would gain from that, not counting the kids, would be you, Hideyoshi, Natsuhi, and, well, that's all that's left, really. They would be the ones to gain from this. But in terms of numbers, Ava and Hideyoshi are on the same. Natsuhi's essentially by herself right now. Which makes me fear that she might be the next target, if there's going to be another killing. This was also plain and clear. The Ushidamiya family had been right in the middle of discussions about how to distribute the inheritance when grandfather died. If this case followed the standard form of any classic mystery novel, the crime was definitely caused by someone with ties to the Ushidamiya family, and who was involved in the inheritance problem. Aunt Ava, who had probably read a few books in that genre herself, her argument may have had a few blind assumptions in it, but it was a standard conclusion that anyone might have reached. I think most people would end up suspecting the servants, even if they used different reasoning to get there. Especially the story about the key to the shutter. That made it very easy to suspect that one of the servants was involved.
なぜか気に入らねえんすよね。
気に入らないって何の話？
あ、いえいえ、こっちの話っす。
I tried to dodge her question by joking, but I couldn't erase the sense of unease welling up inside me. After all, her conclusion was such an easy one to reach. A conclusion that anyone could reach. And I just couldn't be satisfied with that. If I tried spinning the chessboard around like I'd learned from Kitty-san, this was exactly why a servant couldn't possibly be the culprit. Right. They wouldn't gain anything because they're not... If the servants really were the culprits, they wouldn't hide the bodies in a place connected to themselves. I literally just pointed that out! Why on earth would they use the rose garden shed if they were the ones in charge of the key that could unlock it? The police would probably immediately pursue whoever had been in control of the key. It was even possible that some other facts might come to light as a result. The more we think of the servants as the culprits, the less reason they had to carry the bodies into the storehouse. But what if they knew we'd think that, and put corpses in the storehouse for that very reason? No, that's completely impossible. When the police come and inspect the scene of the crime, they'll probably be able to uncover many things. No matter how carefully the culprits carried out that murder, some traces will definitely be found. In other words, they had everything to lose and nothing to gain. If you think about it this way, and look at this murder game from the culprit's side, it's hard to imagine why they'd want to call attention to the corpses. Once the corpses were found, it could result in someone sending a report to the police, or it might make the remaining people more cautious, or it might make the survivors start to search for the culprit. None of these things would make life any easier for the culprit. It's just like the words of the main character's mother in a novel I read recently called Higurashi no... Oh! Are you shitting me? Okay. It's just like the words of... I'm sorry. Freaking Keiichi's mother in a novel I read recently called Higurashi no Nagokorani. Every story needs to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. You did the Higurashi reference, thank you! Eliminating that beginning is essential for the perfect crime. Ain't that right, Keiichi? Right now, we don't know where grandfather is. We don't know if he's already become a victim, or if he's one of the culprits. But this state of confusion must be beneficial to the killer. That symbol again. The culprit has absolutely nothing to gain by showing us the bodies in such an obvious way and making us all realize there's been a murder. In fact, this is the perfect place to spin the chessboard around. In other words, showing us the corpses in such a flashy way must be the culprit's goal in and of itself. So, at the very least, to the culprit, the appearance of 6 corpses there meant more than the deaths themselves. In other words, the culprit wanted this murder on display. To whom? To us. This is a message. The culprit's trying to shove something in our faces. I don't know what it is. At this point in time, this vulgar mass murder isn't making me feel anything except a malice directed towards all of us. Malice towards all of us, is it? Maybe it is Beatrice. Each one of the survivors has some kind of connection to one of the 6 victims. Uncle Krause's death brought Jessica the grief of losing a family member. The deaths of Dad and Kitty-san brought me sorrow, while Aunt Rosa's death brought Maria sorrow. Goda-san's death probably shocked his fellow servants, and Shannon-chan's death brought grief both to George Aniki, who had proposed to her, and Kanon-kun, who had loved her like an older sister. Everyone now on this island has received an equal amount of sadness. Aunt Ava was sure that the servants were in cahoots. But then, how could you explain the deaths of Goda-san and Shannon-chan? At any rate, by this argument, the grief caused by the 6 deaths hit everyone but Aunt Ava and Uncle Hideyoshi. Even Aunt Ava, who had directed suspicion at the servants and acted as though she herself was beyond suspicion, could not be ruled out as a suspect. In the first place, she was able to argue that the servants were suspicious by focusing on the shutter's key. But if you look at it from a perspective of motive and who had gained, Aunt Ava's name rises to the top of the list. So we're thinking that she might be a possible culprit.
バトラ君が何を考えてるか、おばさんわかるわよ。
わ
え
嫌だな。内緒にしててくださいよ。あんなことやこんなことで頭をいっぱいにしてたなんて。
私がこの殺人で一番得をする。
Whoa, what the hell?
どうせ疑われるだろうから、先に自己申告しておくわ。
I tried to dodge the issue by joking around, but apparently it didn't work.
遺産は兄弟の数で分割する。でも今や4兄弟は私一人。後宮家の全財産は全て私のものになるの。
You seem awfully happy about that.
秀吉おじさんが聞いたら、予算か言えばシャレにならんっていうところっすね。
ごめんね。どう取り繕ったってどうせ疑われるだろうからふざけただけよ。だからこの殺人は私の立場から見れば私を疑わせるためのものではないかと思ってるの。
That's right, that is also an option.
困ったことに昨べのアリバイは弱いわ。
聞かせてもらってもいいっすか？昨べのことを。
バトラ君たちも知っている通り、兄弟が遺産をどう食いちぎり合うかという話し合いは深夜まで続いたわ。
Right.
でも何時まで続いたかは知らない。私と主人は朝が早かったからね。もう眠くて24時を過ぎたあたりで抜けさせてもらったの。
So of course it did happen after midnight.
そしてゲストハウスに戻って休んだわ。
それを秀吉おじさん以外の誰かに証明できるっすか？
あら、どうだか。証明になるかわからないけれど、ゲストハウスに戻ってきた時、源氏さんに出迎えを受けてタオルはいるかと聞かれたわ。
Okay, then so we should ask Genji then.
だから私たちがゲストハウスに戻ってきた時間は24時過ぎだと証明してくれると思うわよ。もっとも私の仮説通り使用人たちもグルなのだとしたらこんなのアリバイにならないけどね。
Oh.
確かにそうっすね。
Fair
って
enough.
ことは、俺、今、真犯人と推理ごっこをしてるってことになるんすか？
でも私の名誉のために言わせてもらうけど、遺産目当てだったならこんな変な殺人はしないわよ。だって遺産相続権を喪失させるだけならどんな死に方だって構わない。むしろ事故死に見せかけた方がスマートでしょ。使用人たちを抱き込んで周到に計画していたならなおさらそうするでしょうよ。
確かに、そうっすね。営利で人を殺すなら、それは常に殺人に見せるべきではない。
Obviously.
そういうことよ。
If you make it look like a murder, it obviously puts suspicion right on you.
だからおばさんは今からとてもブルーな気持ちなわけ。警察には黒幕扱いされて散々調べられるでしょうね。やだやだ。
Aunt Ava shrugged with a bitter smile. It was just as easy to suspect Aunt Ava as it was to suspect the servants. So if we spin the chessboard around, does that make it impossible for the culprits to be her, suspicious as she is? However, if that sort of argument always works, then motive can never help us in any way. No, that can't be right. Knowing the motive must give us powerful clues towards knowing the culprit. That's why murderers from all time periods disguise crimes in complicated ways, cleverly preventing their motives from being discovered. I don't get it. I just don't get it. Every time I spin the chessboard around, it keeps flipping from front to back and back to front. Are my thoughts bringing me closer to the truth? Or are they... Are they what? Gonna have to kind of be a little bit more specific about that. Aunt Ava didn't want to talk any more than that, so I folded my arms and headed to the window to cool my head a little. As I looked over the parlor, I saw George Aniki and the others gathered, talking. It looked like they were talking about the magic circle that had been painted onto the shutter. As Uncle Hideyoshi thought back to that in time, he started drawing the shape in the margins of Maria's notebook. I see. Since Maria was second only to grandfather in knowledge of the occult, she might understand what it meant.
多分こんな感じだったと思うで。
Okay, so they're consulting Maria. Okay.
十字架をアレンジしたみたいなマークが書かれとったんや。そしてこんな感じで外周の円を取り囲むように妙な文字がびっしり書き込まれていて、アルファベットとかそういうのとちゃうで。あれはよく言う古代文字とかいうやつや。
あと、円周部の頂点に小さなマークがありましたな。小さな丸を5つ十字状に並べ、それぞれを直線で結んだようなマークでした。
ああ、確かにそんなのも書いてあったで。図形的には間違いなくこれや。
Okay, so they're drawing a
細かい
circle.
文字はわからんが、配列はほぼ同じや。
Everyone was staring down at the shape, so I stared down at it too. From what I'd heard, this had been painted on the shutter to the storehouse with some material that looked like blood. I see. This sure is unsettling.
こんなわけのわかんねえもんを書きたがるのはじいさまだけだろ。まったくどこに行っちまったんだ。とっ捕まえて意味を聞き出してやりたいぜ。
Jessica's voice contained impatience and anger. She hadn't gone so far as to say grandfather was the culprit, but she seemed sure that grandfather knew something about the culprit's background. Of course, if you were searching for a link connecting the Ushidamiya family to the cult, 10 out of 10 people would think of grandfather. Also, to a person who knew nothing of the cult, the strange mark would have no meaning, which meant that this might have been something addressed to grandfather. That's right. And the reason the crime was shown to the survivors was so they'd find this. In that case, where had grandfather, the essential recipient of this message, disappeared off to?
こんな図形に何か心当たりはあるかい？
Maria looked at the shape with a serious face. Maybe she was enthusiastic because this was her area of expertise. However, her appearance was that of someone separated from the events at hand, as though this thing hadn't been drawn on the shutter closed around her mother's corpse.
僕の第一印象ではどこか外国の十字章に似たデザインだなって思ったかな。
ああ、確かにこんなデザインや。ということはどこぞの国と何か関係があるんか？
I doubt it.
その国の十字章はもともと聖地巡礼者を守るための騎士修道士たちの紋章だったそうですな。
つまりこの魔法陣には宗教的な意味があるってことかよ。ますますにちんぷんかんぷんだぜ。
When I looked over at all of them, preparing to jump into the discussion, something shocked me. What? Oh dear. Again, the sentence popped up and I suddenly got a cold chill. Maria was smiling. An eerie and incomprehensible expression on her face. It was almost as if she was making fun of everyone's ignorance. It was an expression I wouldn't have dreamed to find on Maria's face. And she laughed. That eerie, jarring laugh was something I didn't want to believe was possible, even though I was looking at it right in front of my eyes. Oh God! Ew! The fuck is with that smile?
全然違うよみんな こんなの見てわかんないかな
While everyone was busy scared out of their wits, Maria kept on cackling happily by herself. After a while, that laugh was suddenly and abruptly cut off. But her expression still looked like it belonged to someone completely different from Maria.
これは太陽の7の魔法陣だよ。書かれてる文字はヘブライ語。貸して。
Maria stole the writing materials from the stunned Hideyoshi's hand. She then started drawing another magic circle with a rustle, right next to the one Hideyoshi had drawn.
ね、こんな図形だったんじゃないかな。
そんな図形だった。
Is nobody gonna question that sudden creepy smile on her face?
マリア、すごいな。さすが詳しいぜ。
I think she might know too much. Jessica tried to smooth things over by praising Maria. Maybe she wanted to confirm that this was still the Maria we all knew so well. But Maria didn't answer her in any particular way. Maria began swiftly writing unfamiliar characters in the corners of the shape. When Uncle Hideyoshi and Dr. Nanjo saw them, their eyes immediately began to open wide.
天地と左右に書かれているのは風化水道を司る天使たちの名。カサン、アレル、フォルラク、そしてタリアハド。そして斜め四方には4代の王たちの名。アリエル、セラフ、タルシス、ケルブ。
I feel like I should write these names down.
合ってる？
Even if they hadn't been able to correctly write that what they'd seen, when they were once again shown something identical, it wasn't difficult for them to realize the two were the same. When Maria asked them whether it matched, Uncle Hideyoshi and Dr. Nanjo nodded over and over again.
There's no mistaking it. That's it. I'm sure there were characters that look like that. How were you able to write something like that?
あと、演習文に文字が書かれておりました。
わかってるよ。こうでしょ。
Maria quickly began to surround the circumference with more Hebrew writing.
旧約聖書の詩編第116編の16節と17節だよ。聖書くらい読んでなきゃ。
No, I'm not a religious guy, so... Acting as though knowing this was only common sense, Maria laughed. For a while, everyone, including me, was at a loss for words. A little later, George Aniki returned to his senses and slowly managed to speak. That's incredible. I'm surprised. So, what meaning does this magic circle have?
太陽の力を借りる魔法陣だよ。黄金で描き、護符にして身につけたる者はいかなる牢獄であろうとも、束縛から逃れ、自由を得られる力を授けられる。
Okay.
束縛から逃れ、自由を得られる。意味深だぜ。
この束縛という意味は何も肉体的なものだけを指さないと解釈されている。
You mean like bonds of family or something?
だから縛られて牢屋にいる人ばかりに意味があるわけじゃないよ。しがらみや逃れ得ぬ運命など精神的な束縛からの解放も意味してるんだよ。
Oh, okay.
しがらみや逃れ得ぬ運命か。
That's also pretty deep.
しかしさっぱりわからん。それとあの6人の遺体とどんな関係があるっちゅうんや。束縛からの解放どころか殺された上に倉庫に閉じ込められてたんやで。
別にその6人のために魔法陣が描かれてるわけじゃないね。魔法陣のために6人はそこにいるんでしょ。お気の毒だよ。
どういう意味だい？魔法陣のために6人がいるってのは一体。
Maria lifted up her pointer finger and waggled it as if she was making fun of us.
それは演習部に書いてるよ。読めないかな。詩編第116編16節と17節。 読んであげるよ。主は私の枷を解かれました。私はあなたに感謝の生贄を捧げ、主の皆を呼ぶでしょう。ね
ねって何を言ってるのかさっぱりだぜ。
生贄だってのか。
Essentially what I was saying before, the first Twilight. If what Maria had just read aloud was a vital part of the magic circle, then it was saying that sacrifices had to be offered in order for this magic circle to be effective. So human sacrifices have been offered inside the storehouse where the magic circle had been drawn. A heartbeat later, everyone else seemed to reach the same conclusion. Some people were shocked, and others spat out that this was insane as they punched their knees. This was starting to get incredibly disturbing, and we couldn't accept it or understand it. I don't care what kind of magic circles or curses other people believe in, I won't pick a fight with them. But did they really kill Dad and the rest as sacrifices for crap like that? I just couldn't stand that feeling. Compared to this, I preferred it when we were still disgusted by that theory about the fight over the inheritance. As I started getting pissed off with the feeling between anger and sadness, I broke from the circle everyone was in and returned once again to the window. Something had gone insane since yesterday. There was that letter from the witch Beatrice that Maria had read aloud at last night's dinner. Ever since that point, it feels like like this whole mansion and this whole island have been getting more and more firmly locked inside some kind of bizarre world. That's right. When I think back on it, that letter was an invitation from the witch. The ruler of the Nighttime Island had invited us inhabitants of the day to another world. The phone and the radio had been interrupted, and the island was shut off by the typhoon. So you really could call this place another world, cut off from the real one by now. Yeah, as this island is now, it's perfectly normal for a witch to send us letters and for human sacrifices to be offered up for the sake of magic circles. So what will happen next? Some weird people wearing goat masks start doing the Bond Festival dance or something? It's hopeless, I don't get it. The inside of my head's all screwed up. I don't even know what to think. Anger, sadness, the opposing emotions all swirled up together, and they started to suck me in. Unable to resist, I could do nothing but cover my eyes with my hands and trust to my mind and body as I started getting sucked in. As I started losing heart, I began to recall a memory from when I was small. It was from when I was very young. I had unfortunately seen a scary occult movie on TV, and for a while I hadn't even been able to go to the bathroom by myself. That old bastard gave an exaggerated laugh and said this.
なあバトラ、どうして悪魔だのオカルトだのってのをわざわざこうして映画にすると思う？ねえからだよ。そんなねえからわざわざ見たくて作るんだよ。だから俺はオカルト映画なんてちゃんちゃらおかしくて笑っちまうってんだ。
That's why those occult movies just make me laugh.
俺に言わせりゃ、悪魔やら妖怪やらより、今年度の収支報告や機嫌を悪くした女房の方が1億倍も怖えってもんだぜ。さらに言うぜ。俺に言わせ、怖がるってのは、心と生活にゆとりのある連中の娯楽的感情なのさ。暇でしょうがないから。連中は変わった感情で心を遊ばせたくて、悪魔だの、オカルトだのって文化を作り出したんだよ。
Seriously? Why have I been acting so damn thick-headed? I was totally taken in. Don't try to mess with me. This is the human world. I don't give a damn about witches, demons, magic circles, and sacrifices. The human who killed Dad and everyone else is still on this island. That's all there is to it, right? The next person who started speaking to my heart was Kiri-san.
チェスや将棋ってね、終盤の終盤、詰めの最後の段階に入れば入るほど最善手は限られてくるのよ。だから自分が追い詰めている、あるいは追い詰められているというその時、両者の手は限りなく読みやすくなるのよ。つまり 完全に追い詰められて打つ手なしって思ったその時こそ最も読みやすい瞬間なのよ。でも守勢に立った人間はどうしても考えが固くなって相手の手を読むことにまで考えが至らない。そういう時はね、チェス盤をひっくり返すの。
With all my strength, I slapped my face with both hands. Now my eyes were truly open. When you don't understand anything and you're completely cornered just like I am now, isn't that the perfect time to spin the chessboard around? While on the defensive, we can't even guess the culprit's scheme. If we spin it around and look at it that way, just what might we see? First off, at the time the culprit committed the murders, they knew the island was being cut off by the typhoon. Therefore, they should have understood that even if they carried out the murders, they wouldn't be able to get away early the next morning. In short, the culprit had begun without securing a way to escape. Furthermore, that bastard tossed the corpses in the storehouse. Then was even kind enough to say, "Here they are," with that weird bit of graffiti. In other words, since they probably found the corpses sooner or later, they wanted to show them to us. If we'd all been dim and hadn't noticed the storage shed, the culprit's goal would not have been achieved, would it? If you think about it this way, that bastard of a culprit. Since this morning, they must have been watching our every move with bated breath. After all, if we hadn't been so kind as to discover what was on the storehouse, all of that hard work and preparation they did last night would have just gone poof. What did the culprit want to make us feel by showing us the corpses in the storehouse? All 6 of the bodies had their faces noticeably destroyed. Was it a grudge? A warning? The defacement of the bodies had occurred after death, so it hadn't been the means by which the culprit had killed. It didn't mean anything to those who had been killed. It did have meaning to those who found the bodies. The culprit wanted to make it appear that they had been killed so brutally. After thinking this way, I really want to tell that bastard to stop taking me so lightly. Who just danced to that tune? If you're told, "Please be scared," or you can just say, "Really? Sure thing?" When someone tells the great Ushida Miya battler the entrance is right here, I'm the kind of guy who will start wanting to sneak in through the window. The next thing that had me concerned was that so-called magic circle on the shutter. As Maria, who had shown that her knowledge of the occult rivaled grandfather's, had recognized, that magic circle was genuine. They must have drawn that thing in pitch black darkness, taking a lot of time and holding an umbrella in one hand. Isn't that amount of hard work and perfectionism impressive? What purpose would have been worth all that effort? If we were looking for a fan of the occult in this mansion, most likely, all of us would naturally suspect grandfather. Did they want to make us think grandfather was involved? But if that's all they wanted, they could have just drawn an old scribble any old scribble that looked like a magic circle. It wasn't like any of us amateurs would be able to tell the difference between genuine and fake. However, this magic circle was genuine, and furthermore, it had even been written in Hebrew. So this magic circle had a message that could only be understood by someone with knowledge of the occult. A message is a form of communication. By sending it, they were hoping for a reaction. A reaction? For some reason, we couldn't find grandfather now. I don't know how grandfather might have spotted the magic circle on the shutter, but did he choose to hide himself in reaction to that? No. Was it a trap to make us suspect that grandfather had participated? You could read it either way. Damn, that's annoying. What kind of reaction was the culprit hoping to get out of us by putting on this occult show? Somehow, that felt like the culprit's weak point. The letter from Beatrice that Maria had read aloud during last night's dinner sprang back to my mind. This was a freak who'd asked us to enjoy a battle of wits. Isn't that interesting? This is a battle of wits between us and the witch. Will we be sucked up by her occult game first, or will we pull off her fake skin first? There's a whole day until the typhoon passes. Why not enjoy ourselves? Okay. That was oddly specific. Why not enjoy ourselves? Okay. I finally noticed that the inside of the parlor had gone quiet again. Everyone had sunk into their favorite sofas, some deep in thought, some irritated, some acting depressed. Maria was once again enjoying the TV as if she'd never left it. It looked like she'd found the commercials more fun than the boring program, and she happily yelled ooh ooh and giggled. I stared at each person's appearance in turn. If there isn't a 19th person, the culprit must be in this room. Hideyoshi, George, Jessica, Nanjo, and Maria. And even me. Right now, Aunt Natsuhi's searching the mansion with the servants, right? Then we shouldn't say, in this room. In this mansion is where the culprit has to be. After all, it's possible Aunt Natsuhi was behind this, and we still can't deny that one of the servants might be the killer. Anyone could be guilty. Still, Aunt Natsuhi and the rest sure are taking their time. Of course, it's not a small mansion, but isn't this taking a little too long just to walk around checking the windows and doors? Just as I was thinking this, Aunt Natsuhi and the rest returned. Not one of them was missing. But our relief was short-lived. Everyone looked at Aunt Natsuhi in shock. The talk I'd had with Aunt Ava started to creep back into my mind. The possibility that the culprits had enough in numbers or weapons to kill all those six at once?
驚かせてしまいましたね。
She has a gun.
万が一に備えて持ってきたものです。
After all, that thing in Aunt Natsuhi's hand was a rifle. At a glance, its silhouette looked like a hunting gun, but it was unusually short and kind of looked like a kid-sized weapon. However, it had a weightiness to it that made it clear it was no kid's toy.
それは金蔵さんの銃ですな。
ご存知でしたか？そうです。お父様の古いコレクションの中にあったことを思い出し、探し出してきました。
ひゅー、すっげえ。夏日おばさん、それ本物なんすか？
ええ、本物です。実弾を発砲できますよ。昔お父様は野鳥を追い払うのに使ったりしていました。あら懐かしい。どこから出てきたんやら。私がいくら触らせてって言っても指一本触れさせてくれなかったやつよ。
じい様こんなの持ってたんですか？知らなかったですよ。
お父様は昔西部劇にどっぷり使ってたことがあってね。
What?
あの世代はこういうライフル銃が大好きなのよ。
結構年季の入った銃のようですね。でもこんな短い仕様のは初めて見ました。
I'm not very smart with guns, so I don't know what a Winchester is.
ああ、思い出したわその銃。
That really takes me back. That's the one Steve McQueen fired off in Wanted Alive or Dead. Father sure has good taste. 親方様がだいぶ昔にアメリカより特別にお取り寄せになられたものです。
As you can see, it is a working gun, so please don't tell anyone about this.
手に入れられたばかりの頃は大層気に入られておりまして、撃つより薬莢を出す動作が面白いらしくて、裏の森でいろいろとかっこつけて遊んでおられたもんですよ。
しかし物騒ね。そんなものまで持ち出しちゃうのかしら。万が一に備えてです。賊はおそらく一人ではないでしょう。しかも主人たちを6人も殺した恐ろしい相手です。私には主人に代わって皆さんを明日まで守る義務がありますので。
As Natsuhi's son said this, she slumped down into one of the sofas and took a deep breath. She had been trying to find Grandfather as well as check the doors and windows. Since Grandfather wasn't with her, she probably still didn't know where he was.
屋敷内の戸締まりは厳重に確認してきました。ですが万が一ということもあります。みんななるべくここに一緒にいた方がいいでしょう。そうね。ここに全員が集まって相互監視をしている方が安心だわ。それはどういう意味ですか、エヴァさん。別に夏日姉さんの意見に賛成しただけよ。
Not really. You're automatically casting suspicion on everyone. There was a stormy atmosphere between the two of them. No shit. If you think about who was the most suspicious from the inheritance problem standpoint, Aunt Ava was the obvious answer. However, there was no proof that Aunt Natsuki was innocent. No, if you view Beatrice's letter as one of the grandfather's complicated pranks and think of this crime as an extension of that, there's more than enough reason to suspect even grandfather. Also, Aunt Natsuki thought the criminal was on the outside, but Aunt Ava thought the criminal was on the inside. In short, it was the question of whether or not a 19th person exists. And that same question had been repeated endlessly since last night's dinner, with the letter from the witch who called herself Beatrice. So was the culprit among us or not? And did the witch Beatrice exist or not? If you assume that something as stupid as a witch can't exist, you're basically saying that one of these relatives here, who share a common bloodline, is the culprit. If that was too unpleasant, it'd be much more comfortable to simply accept the fairy tale-like character of the witch. A witch? A witch drawing a bizarre magic circle and offering human sacrifices? If I could accept that rubbish, I'd be able to trust all the people in this room. However, damn common sense got in the way. It kept repeating that witches don't exist. In that case, the culprit must be among us. In the middle of the seemingly endless rain, none of us could break the silence. Okay. Had a feeling that'd be the end of the episode there. Oh! 1 in the morning? Or 1 p.m. That's right, it's morning already, so it'll be 1 p.m. Okay. This episode surely is going quite a long way. But that's where I'm going to end this. It doesn't look like anything else has updated yet. Okay, so, theory time. I'm still kind of somewhat on the edge here. I don't know what to believe, whether it be that there's a 19th person, or the witch is among us. Again, I'm leaning toward the witch theory. But it did bring up some valuable thoughts that this could be multiple people doing this, which opens up Natsuki and the servants, and obviously Aunt Ava, who has the most to gain from this. So, who, obviously don't answer this because I kind of want to figure this out myself. Who is the culprit? I have to keep asking myself that. But, another thing that really disturbed me, Maria's reaction. Like, I knew that she believed in the witches and all that, but first off, I was not expecting those facial expressions, nor was I expecting that reaction and laugh of hers. Which, again, that somehow makes me lean even more. That it leads me to both sides. But here's the thing. I can't believe that it's okay, if I think about this through the 18th, only that there's 18 people, and judging by Maria's my actions, that would open her up to be suspicious. But here's the thing. She's a 9-year-old girl. How would she be able to pull that off? I felt like that incident was supposed to make me cast suspicion on that, or at least attempt to suspect her. Now here's my thoughts on the witch again. If there's a 19th person, obviously they must have come to Maria, because again, we never figured out who gave her that umbrella. And she did say it was Beatrice, so if we take her word at face value and say that she's telling the truth, then Beatrice actually exists. So, I don't know. It seems like the murders obviously were sort of, enacting the first Twilight, which makes me lean toward the witch theory again. And that also makes me think that, okay, regardless if it's an 18th or 19th person, part of me, there's something yelling at me in the back of my head that Maria has to be involved somehow, regardless of which way you're going, whether you believe there's an 18th person or a 19th person. Or, sorry, I mean, if there's one of the 18 or it's a 19th person. Regardless of which theory I'm siding with, which, again, I'm still leaning toward the witch theory, I think Maria is involved in some way. I don't know. that's all I could get from this. Oh, before I end this video, I do have something completely off topic, sort of. Is there a way to buy the soundtrack for this game? Like, as much as I hate reliving what happened to the victims and all that, ever since I heard that the name of that song that played when we discovered the bodies was called Golden Slaughter, I looked it up. That is addictive to listen to. It is disturbing and it sounds good. I want to know if there's a way for me to actually buy the soundtrack for this game, because I'm loving it. Then again, I'm still in the first episode, so there's probably a lot more music that I still haven't listened to that I obviously can't wait to listen to be honest. But anyway, that's me gushing about the music. Music is really damn good. I think that's pretty much all I got to say about this. I've given my theories, I believe, though they seem to be not very well founded. I'm not able to offer really that much evidence concerning or backing my theories. So I'm guessing that's where I'm going to have to leave this. So, if you guys like what you see, if you guys like what you see, please let me know. So, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.